So I'd like to call the Hannaford Regional Technical School District Board meeting to order. It is now 5:05 p.m. and I apologize for being a few minutes late, but we were having technical difficulties with our board members logging in. I'd like to start with doing introduction of board members. I will reach out to people as I see them on my screen. And we'll just go that way. Lorraine?
Lorraine Morse, representing the Addison Central School District.
Christina?
Hi, Christina Macklin, Addison Northwest School District Rep.
Nick Costin?
Nick Colston, representing ACSD.
Kim?
Is Kim on?
I thought she was on. Did we lose her again?
I think she was muted.
Kim?
She's muted, but she's on.
Well, there's Kim Farnham, Mount Abe Union District. Judd?
We're live.
Thanks, Kim.
ACSD and business, the self-employed
Workforce
business
Alliance.
end thing.
That's okay.
No. You can close that out.
Mike? Mike? Mike McGrath from Addison Northwest. There's
Yeah,
Mike.
Mike McGrath, the Northwest. I think figured it out on the meeting.
And last but not least, I'm Suzanne Buck. I'm from ACSD. And we have a brand new board member tonight. His name is Steve Rooney, and we'll give him the floor so he can introduce himself. Steve? Whoops. Steve left the meeting. I think Steve gets
Popping in and out.
Well, when Steve rejoins us, we'll let him introduce himself. While we wait for Steve to rejoin, would those that are visiting us like to introduce themselves? Kelly?
Kelly Mills, Hannaford Career Center, agriculture teacher.
Gretchen?
Gretchen Bailey, business office.
David?
David Roberts, Adult Ed Tech Coordinator.
Jay?
Jay Stetzel, Assistant Director.
Linda?
Linda Barrett, clerk.
Patrice?
Patrice Alexander, administrative assistant.
Wendy?
Wendy Pratt, math coach and IB coordinator. Hi, everyone.
Dana?
Dana Peterson, Superintendent, Director.
And I don't see Steve back on here yet, so.
You also have Austin.
Oh, sorry, Austin. I didn't see you on my list.
That's okay. Austin Haynes, business manager.
Is there anybody else sitting in that room with you three that I can't see?
Just us three.
Three.
Okay. All right. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as written, please?
Moved.
Second.
So the motion has been moved by Lorraine and seconded, I think that was Judd?
Judd.
To
Correct.
approve the agenda as written. All in favor? Whoops, wait a minute. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Everything's good? Okay. Hearing no discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of approving the agenda as printed, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Do we have any comments from the visitors that we have online tonight? I'm guessing that's a no. Moving on, we have correspondence on a 2005 Toyota Prius donation. Dana?
Yes, just that's under the action agenda for determination about whether the board wants to accept that. That is a 2005 Toyota Prius, valued at approximately $500. And then we also have a resignation letter, which is also on the agenda under action. And I believe you have a copy. I think it might have been sent to you a little bit late, but everybody should have a copy of that letter.
Did everyone receive the copy of the resignation letter?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Steve Rooney, before you have technical issues again, would you like to introduce yourself?
Can you hear me for starters?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great. Because it keeps telling me that my mic is off due to the size of the call. But yeah, so hi everyone. I'm joining from the Mount Abe Unified School District. And I'm excited to join the group and see what you're all up to. I know you've been doing great things. I enjoy the presentation you guys give every year for our board, and really excited to see what's going on at the Career Center.
Steve, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, what do you do professionally? And so people know
so
something about
I'm an architect with Breadloaf, and I live in Starksboro. My wife, Alice Weston, is a special education teacher in Essex Junction. I grew up in Virgins, and I went to Texas for school and came back and have been working in Vermont as an architect ever since.
Great. Welcome on board. Thank you ever so much for agreeing to step up and being the representative from the Mount Abe board. We look forward to having you on board. Thank you.
All right.
Nick, do you have the monthly accounts?
I do. So the only expenditures came out of the general fund in the last 4 weeks, and they were $154,000, $0.98 and 27 cents, and they were approved by or reviewed by Suzanne and myself. The payroll for August 14th was $30,945 and 20 cents, and then the last one in August for August 28th was back up to a more normal $92,729 and 87 cents. That's all there is in expenditures.
Great, thank you. Linda, were you able to get those numbers or?
I have them, yes.
Okay, great.
Minutes as well, Suzanne.
What was it? Someone just said something and I didn't hear who it was.
It was Dana. Minutes also are on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
So, did everyone get a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
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 So since, so they should be, are they all set then? No one has anything that needs to have them pulled out or anything? So since we've approved our agenda, those minutes should also be approved?
I move to approve.
Nope, no motion.
No, what I was saying was since we approved the overall, agenda, we approved those minutes.
Also.
Okay? So we're moving on to the action agenda. And so our first item is the donation of the Prius. And Dana, do you have a actual letter that you want us to take action on, or just?
No, not necessarily. We had an offer of a donation of a 2005 Toyota Prius. Estimated cash value of $500. I have talked with the instructors at North Campus about the value of that donation, and it can be used both as a training vehicle since it does hybrid technology, and our auto instructors are moving towards incorporating more hybrid technology in the training of our students. And even if the vehicle was not a functioning vehicle that could be repaired and put on the road, it would still have value as a training tool, but it actually could be resold potentially. So it will serve multiple purposes in the auto program. So it's my recommendation to support their request for accepting that donation.
Okay. May I have a motion to accept the donation of a 2005 Toyota Prius with a value of about $500?
I'll move that.
So that's been moved by Mike McGrath. Is there a second? Judd has seconded. Is there any discussion around the Toyota Prius?
Does it currently run, or is it?
I believe it is functioning, yes.
It is functioning.
I believe so. But their primary interest is in using the technology to explore, because we don't currently have a hybrid vehicle for training purposes. So,
great. That'd be useful.
Yeah.
Good. Are there any other questions about the acceptance of the donation? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of accepting the 2005 Toyota Prius donation with an estimated value of around $500, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. The next item is a resignation letter. And we have all received this, I believe, in your emails. And it's from Douglas Brooks. And he has, his letter is, Dear Dana, effective immediately, I'm resigning my position as construction trades teacher. And so
because it's a professional position, it is incumbent upon the board to accept that resignation. If there's any discussion you would like to have, that would probably be appropriate for executive session rather than open session.
Right. So that was all I was going to read, but I'd like to entertain a motion to accept his resignation.
So moved. Kim?
So it's been moved by Kim to accept Douglas Brooks' resignation effective immediately. Is there a second?
Second.
Whoops, Lorraine, you seconded it? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to accept Douglas Brooks' resignation effective immediately. Is there any discussion on just the resignation? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. Policy 2.4, financial planning and budgeting is, Austin, are you taking this or?
Yes, that's awesome.
Yep, I'll take the floor on this one. Can you see me okay?
No. No.
Not really.
We need to rotate the camera.
Now we can.
Is that better?
There we go.
Okay,
Thank you, Austin.
sure. So this one should be familiar with the veteran board members and staff. It's a reference to policy we presented in the last board meeting. And it basically outlines just our adherence to the board approved budget and different financial and operating procedures we have in place to stay on track. It gives a high level description of our checks and balances as they pertain to revenue and expenditures. and different sorts of record keeping and tracking of those expenses and revenues. It outlines or details the purchase order or purchase requisition process we have for staff and faculty to make requests against their budgets. And then it details at the bottom on the first page our process with respect to monitoring cash flow and pulling off of our line of credit to float operating expenses when cash is short. On the second page, the noteworthy pieces to look at are the audit, which is scheduled for November 9th. I think we mentioned that in the last meeting. And then the two pieces in the last paragraph just talk about what's already been approved, $120,000 for the HRA benefit for this fiscal year, and then a $25,000 contingency liability that was built in, which is an increase from $4,000 in the previous fiscal year. So that was a pretty quick overview or synopsis. Are there any particular questions you have? None. I'll take that as a no. Great. So I think, Suzanne, do you want me to move into the BRF spreadsheet as well, or?
Please.
I think technically we should take action on the policy 2.4.
Well, I didn't know if the BRF budget was part of that policy, or is that separate?
That's separate.
Okay, so then if it is separate, then we will need to have a motion to accept policy 2.4, financial planning and budgeting.
So moved, Kim?
So it's been moved by Kim,
Second.
seconded by Nick, to accept policy 2.4, financial planning and budgeting. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion's passed. BRF budget and spreadsheet.
Great. So there isn't a lot of change from last time you looked at this budget. I think the only piece to note is since we drafted this document, we received an invoice for the line item that reads number 42 is the bond renovation project. And so we just recently received an actual invoice of $15,000 to count against that line. So that'll bring it to $15,000 instead of the 20 there. That is really the only changes that we have recently. Otherwise, the rest of the numbers are pretty firm.
Okay. Will any of these numbers be affected going forward due to COVID?
I missed your question there, Suzanne. You said in light of COVID, are we expecting to change the numbers, or?
Well, will they be changed? Yeah. Due to loss of funding and such, or are they pretty secure?
I guess besides the $5,000 we have in buffer, I think that would be a pertinent conversation to have over the coming few weeks and months. I think we're still trying to gauge what will be the state's response, and I think we went into detail about this in our last board meeting, but we recently requested a small chunk of change for the COVID relief funds that the state put into place. And there's still further details coming out about whether or not we qualify for other relief funds like the ESSER funds and different relief. So at the moment, I don't have much more information than that. I guess I would defer to Dana on strategy.
Anything that would be attributable to the BRF would have to be related to COVID, and it would have to be expended out of the BRF and then reimbursed to the BRF. At this point in time, any expenses have really come out of the general fund and not out of the BRF because they've been small expenditures that are part of the regular operating budget. So those monies would go back to as miscellaneous revenues to the general fund. Unless something major is needed, and we would then take that out of the HORF, and then it would be reimbursed. So at this point in time, there's nothing that is applicable that will change the HORF fund balance, either positively or negatively.
Okay, all right, great, thank
And
you.
it's based on what Austin has said, that amount is probably 52,273 because that 20,000 encumbrance is only 15. Will only turn into a $15,000 expenditure. So there's a little bit more, as Austin mentioned, in terms of the $5,000 buffer.
Yeah.
And generally at this point in time, unless there are other questions, Suzanne, we entertain a motion for the facilities committee to be able to expend between the $5,000 limit that I have as the superintendent and the $15,000 limit at which all bids would have to come to the board for approval anyway. So generally speaking, in order to be able to capitalize on various opportunities for using the BRF fund to leverage either reimbursements or offers for improving the facility, we usually entertain a motion for the facilities committee to expend up to $15,000, between $5,000 and $15,000.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Dana, you would like a motion from the board to allow the facilities committee to expend between 5K and 15K of the BRF funds?
Yes.
Aren't we already authorized for that?
We do it annually.
Oh, do we?
That's an annual authorization.
Okay.
Okay, so this time, and then, so it would be, we would report to the board, but the facilities committee could authorize anything in that range from 5 to 15. And so that gives the facilities committee the ability to expend per fund before we have to go to a formal bid process of getting 3 bids and presenting them to the board at a regular board meeting. So it just helps with, we don't have to use it very frequently. I think we've used it once in my 3+ years now, but it does provide the facilities committee a little bit of authorization to be able to bridge a gap between a $5,000 expense that I might have and something that we might want to improve.
But Dana, does the facility meet more than once a month, or they meet the same?
They can. They meet at least once a month, but they also have had, over the course of time, have met bi-weekly or even more frequently than that, depending on what was happening. So right now we're back on to a, we don't have much that's going on, so I think we're meeting monthly.
Yeah, monthly.
So can I have a motion from someone on the board to allow the facilities committee permission to expend between 5K and 15K of the BRF funds as needed for expenses?
So moved by Judd.
Judd is moved. Is there a second?
Second, Nick.
Nick is seconded. Is there any discussion? Lorraine, you look like you want to ask something.
Yeah, I did want to just get a clarifying question. So is this like multiple times during the year they can do this? Or is this like, I mean, if something came up on a monthly basis, are they authorized to do that without, if we approve this without talking to the board first?
You would have to have different things. They can't be part of the same project, otherwise you'd be outside of that that parameter. But just
right,
like,
but like every month, if something came up before a board meeting, they can authorize $15,000 every month if they chose to without our permission.
We wouldn't do that.
Well, Nick, I'm not saying you would or wouldn't. I'm saying, do you have the authority to do that if we approve this?
If you approve this, the authority would be would rest with the facilities committee to approve, for example, an $8,000 improvement out of the berth, not out of the general fund, because if we have a maintenance line that has 30,000 in it, and we have something that's 8,000 out of the general fund, I would be authorized to do that because I'm your representative there. I'm only authorized to take 5,000 out of the berth. But if the facilities committee believed that they needed $8,000 this month and another $7,000 next month for a different project, they would be authorized to do that, as long as it doesn't go beyond 15,000.
Right, so Lorraine, the motion is that they can expend between $5,000 and $15,000.
Right.
For the year.
That's it. That's, so, and this is done yearly.
Right, but I just want to make sure I understand. Every month, if something came up before a board meeting or after a board meeting, the facilities committee could decide to spend $14,000, and then the next month they could decide to spend $14,000 on another project without referring it to the board first.
Technically, yes, that's correct.
I'm not sure how I feel about that. I guess I'm not sure I understood before that that's what we were authorizing.
Nick, you're on the facility.
Yes, I am.
So,
In a practical sense, we would always come to the board. I think, as you know, over the past 2 or 3 years that I've been involved, every time we have something over 5,000, we almost always come to the board anyway. So I don't think you need to have any fear that we would do 3 lots of 15,000. That would be the end of the berth anyway.
It also allows the flexibility, if there's not going to be a board meeting for 28 days, to be able to take advantage of whatever we need to do. Sometimes it's combining grant money that we might have from BISBIT with money out of the berth that would allow us to take advantage of a special facilities upgrade. And sometimes there are turnaround times that are fewer than 2 weeks. In order to be able to do that, we need to have flexibility. The facilities committee needs to have the flexibility to do that. I have the flexibility to do that up to $5,000.
Right. And you
So-
said we use this, that it's rare that the facilities committee has utilized this in the past.
I can only think of once. There may have been a second one, but I can only think of one off the top of my head when that was the case.
Okay.
So Lorraine, I think that we have a really good facilities committee, and I don't think they try to pull one over on us. So, I really, so since this is a yearly motion, I don't think that they would try that. And I think that in the past, like Nick said, they've brought things to us when.
I can give you an example. That would be helpful. We had a piece of equipment fail in the kitchen, and we needed to replace it with it was a cooling element, but it was beyond my 5,000, and we needed to act quickly. And so the facilities committee was able to say, yes, we had the meeting. They approved that purchase. It was beyond the 5,000 that I could do, and we just reported at that in the facilities minutes to the board at the next meeting. And I think that everything worked out exactly the way it was supposed to. There were no issues with that. But otherwise, we would have been stuck over a month without a piece of equipment. Or we would have had to float a loan from the general fund and then have it paid back through the berth to do that, which is just cumbersome.
Right.
So there's still accountability. It's not that there's lack of accountability. We have to report on these expenditures as part of the monitoring reports monthly or at least quarterly. And so that would be identified by Austin, that's what we've done, and then you have an opportunity to chime in about whether that was appropriate or not, but you're at least authorizing the facilities committee to make that expenditure so that we can move forward with some of our programming.
And Dana, as you mentioned, there is a facilities report submitted to the board every month.
Right.
So if we authorized, you would see that within 10 days.
Yeah, okay, I don't want to belabor it. I just wanted to clarify what I was actually agreeing to. Thank you.
Good. No,
you're welcome.
Thank you. So is there any other discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote on giving the facilities committee permission to expend between $5,000 and $15,000 of the borough fund if necessary. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any
I'm going to,
abstentions? What's that?
I'm going to abstain,
Okay.
just because.
Okay, so Lorraine, you're on policies committee. You have 4 policies you're presenting tonight?
Yes, I did see that on the agenda. The policy committee actually hasn't met for quite some time.
The last time we met was the 29th of June.
Yeah, all right. And there are 4 policies on the agenda. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at them. I'm gonna bring them up again here. Hold on. Let me find mine. The first one on the agenda is recruitment background checks. And let me bring it up.
I believe, Lorraine, the board has seen all of these previous?
Yes. Yeah, I believe they have, because we couldn't vote on them if we hadn't already reviewed them, right?
Well, the policy, the Budget and Policy Committee has reviewed these and approved them for warning.
Right.
So we couldn't get, depending on how, we weren't supposed to have 2 meetings, July and August. We were supposed to just have an August meeting. And I believe, if the minutes are correct from the Budget and Policy Committee, that though it was approved for the August 5th meeting, but we had a very ambitious agenda, so we just removed those to be put on.
Yeah, I saw them on the action agenda, but I wasn't sure whether we had presented them all. We have? Or
They're on the action agenda for warning only.
Okay, that's.
So you have to take action to warn them for the first reading.
All right, that's what I thought, that we hadn't actually.
That's correct. No, we have not. This is the first time the full board is.
Right, okay, but that's what I thought. So, anyway, we've got, the first one is personal recruitment and background checks. And I don't know if anybody has any, questions about anything on it. And the next one is about substitute teachers. And talks about, qualifications.
Lorraine?
Yeah.
We can't hear what you're saying. I don't know if you've turned away from your mic or what, but
sorry.
We can't hear you. Sorry.
Is this better?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. The second one is on substitute teachers, and it, just talks about how they're chosen, the process. And then the next one is volunteers. And again, that's a similar thing, the process and what a volunteer, the definition of what a volunteer. The last one is capitalization of assets. And that talks about proper control and conservation of the properties and the financial, reporting. And so these are all have to be warned before we can actually vote on them. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on any of them or.
Christina Christina has a question for you.
Okay, Christina, I will try to answer it, but I may have to defer, but yes.
My question is, are these brand new policies or are they existing policies that have been amended in some way?
Oh.
They're all existing and they've been amended and updated by the Vermont School Boards Association last fall.
Okay, so they've been vetted by the VSBA and attorneys and all that stuff. So
That's correct.
is there a way for us to see the amendments or not?
What was that, Christina? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, I just was wondering if there's a way for us to see what was amended, or are they minor amendments or major amendments to these? Just curious.
I don't recall, to be honest. I don't remember there being anything terribly.
It was mostly consistency between the policies that make reference to the same scrutiny and background checks. The only place where it deviates from the model policies are that the model policies say that the district can do various levels of screening, and what the Budget and Policy Committee decided, my recommendation was that all screening should be consistent. So now that consistency is not only within the policy as it relates to the model policy, it's across policies that relate to employment and volunteer work. And all of these policies are required, just they're on the required list of the VSBA policies.
So Dana, if somebody wasn't on the policy committee but wanted to see what changes the VSBA was recommending, is there a place that they could go where they could see those changes that VSBA was recommending to policies?
So the VSBA doesn't recommend changes. The VSBA gives model policies that are on the VSBA website. And I would certainly recommend you can go there and check them out and see how it compares to the policies that we have presented to you this evening. If you would like a comparison, we can probably provide that before the next meeting. If you would like to know specifically what language is changing.
Right, that was more of what I was trying to get at, is if the VSBA updates a policy, can people find where the old one was and what they're updating, so people could see what the language change is.
So we have, those are all available on the website under budgets, off of a link off of the About Us page to the board, and you can find all of the policies that we currently have. And you can go to the VSBA website for model policies, and you can see what they recommend. But what I can suggest is that Budget and Policy will be meeting before our next board meeting, and we can do a synopsis of what those changes are, because that's what we did at, I think, our June 29th meeting. We did a crosswalk comparison between the model policies and our previous existing policies.
Will that help, Christina?
Yeah, I'm kind of comparing it to what we do in our district. So when we get a first read through, the changes are indicated in red from the current policy, so we can, see pretty quickly what the new pieces are and what the old pieces are, and then talk about why there are changes. I'm not trying to make more work for anybody, but it would be helpful to understand if the changes are minor or major, and there's a big.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, Christina. Thank you for mentioning that.
Steve has questions.
Yeah, that's the way the non-aid board works as well. The warned version is usually sent out as a review copy with strikeouts and highlights.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Thank you all for helping us make our policy work even more streamlined and more effective for all of you. Because your suggestions make a whole lot of sense. Lorraine, did you write those down? I mean, I wrote them down, but you're our chair of that committee.
Well, I mean, I didn't write it down. I just will remember that, yes, we need to do that.
Okay. So, what is the board's pleasure? If they've been warned so that you can read them, would you like us to bring them back again, but with showing you all the changes, and then have you approve them for final approval at the next meeting, or what would you like?
Yes.
Maybe. Well, I was just going to say, since we've already read the
Yes.
maybe Lorraine, the policy committee could just summarize the changes for this first go round, and then the next time we do this, we get strike through versions of changes. Is that all right, or?
We're meeting next week, and so I think and I think we can talk about that, what makes the most sense this time. If it's easy to send you guys copies with the original stuff, then we'll do that. If if it seems like it makes more sense to just provide a summary, then as long as you guys are okay with whichever we end up deciding it makes the most sense, then that's fine with me.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So,
Suzanne, just one.
Normally on the action items, we have to take a vote on them. So I'm going to ask for a recommendation to refer them to policy committee to write a synopsis on all the changes and then bring them back for final approval.
Well, technically, Suzanne, I think you just need to take action to warn them for the first reading tonight.
Yeah.
And the budget and policy committee is gonna meet next week and we'll take care of that anyway. I don't know that you need official action on that, but you do need to take action on whether this is being constituted for the first reading.
So what are people's druthers here? Do you want to call this a first reading, or would you like to wait till next month?
So your options are to warn it tonight or table it.
Right.
It's that simple.
I would warn it tonight.
So would I.
Put a motion to warn it tonight. I think that's.
I'll second
already.
So a motion's been made by Mike to warn these 4 policies for the next meeting. It's been seconded by Nick. Is there any further discussion?
I have just one question. What was the capitalization amount? It's 5,000 now. What was it before? Do you remember?
I don't know that we had it identified. This is one of those policies that did not have an amount, I think, and it was recommended by the auditors to set that at 5,000. So we did, I don't think, previously have a designated amount for capitalization.
The IRS used to have 1,000.
I'm sorry?
The Internal Revenue Service used to have 1,000, I think, at one time.
I can't comment on
I
that.
think it changes. It might be 2,500 now. I can get back to you on that if you need to.
Yeah, it seems a little high.
Well, I think we also are following what other districts have used as their capitalization as well. So I don't think that this came from RHR Smith, our auditors, and they recommended the amount that was in there, so.
Okay.
But Austin may be right, it may be as low as 25 million.
It changes over time, but
Yeah, it does.
I can get back to you on that.
Good, thank you.
Is there any further discussion or questions on any of the policies? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote on the motion to take the 4 policies and warn them for next meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's passed. The next portion of the agenda is just an informational agenda. We had some reports to the board. Does anybody have any questions on any of the reports that were submitted to us?
I have a question on some of the adult ed stuff. Are they, you know if they're gonna lighten up on the amount of people we can have in those classes, or is that pretty much set for this year?
David?
We are following the guidance for, from the Agents of Ed and the Department of Health. And so for welding, we have 8 machines in the room, and we feel like we can safely do 4 now. Woodworking, we started slow. We may be able to add up to 8. But it's definitely an issue. What we're hoping to do is add more classes. So.
David, the intro to welding and the intro to woodworking basics, are you saying that those classes are full currently at your reduced capacity, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but what we've done is shorten the class to 4 weeks instead of 8. So we'll be able to run additional classes before the Christmas break.
Okay.
So David, the cost and the expense are scalable and prorated based on the number of students and the time frame. So if you were to expand it, it would scale up. So we're not losing money, is that correct?
Yes, of course. We're scaling down the cost and trying to adjust. Our larger classes and our revenues are the LNA and the phlebotomy classes.
Right. Thank you.
Suzanne? Yeah, Dana, I have a question for your report.
Sure.
The preliminary enrollment projections.
Lorraine?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
You better face your mic because we can't hear you.
Okay. I'm trying to look at my computer while I'm using my iPad so I can do both. Sorry. Yeah, Dana, the Mount Abraham numbers being down because of their change in scheduling.
Yes.
How is that going to be a change in scheduling for the whole year? And is that 19 students just for the fall semester? And that sounds very concerning to me when you put it with the other 5% reduction in students from last year's numbers and the other.
That's for the year.
Okay. Well, it's still somewhat concerning. Yeah.
Well, it's for each semester, but each semester would be for the year. So it's the same for first semester and second semester.
Right.
So reduction in FTE will be the same for the fall semester and the spring semester because none of those students will be able to come.
Okay.
So David, oh, sorry, Lorraine, you go.
No, that's concerning to me, given the fact that we are already so high budget-wise per student, and we've already gotten flack in the past, as you know. So that's just concerning to me that as we're looking toward the FY22.
It's $200,000 worth of budget implication, just off the top of my head.
So,
Okay.
so Dana, I know that reading a lot of the AOE reports and things coming out of Montpelier, at one point they were looking at possibly doing a hold harmless on the FTEs for students. Has there been any motion on that?
I have not heard anything recently, other than what you heard in terms of that same information. So we're hoping that, I think that is something that is going to affect all schools regardless, but with respect to CTE and our very unique way of counting students, that would have a very big impact if they could keep the numbers as they were for last year, for example. I mean, that would make a big difference for us. The other thing is, and this is for down the road, there's also a topic of discussion for refunding or defining a pilot for funding CTE, at least the 3 independent CTE centers, differently than what is currently done with the FTE model and the 3-year average. But once again, that will not be, I don't think, ready for adoption for the next budget cycle. Because if that is taken up, it will be taken up in the next biennium, which won't happen until January, and we'll have to set a FY22 budget. So if the whole harmless provision does go into effect, that would benefit both the general ed side of K-12 education as well as the career and technical side. But I haven't had any further updates. We might have one this week, but I can't say for sure.
Okay, Steve, and then Kim.
So Dana, is this, was the explanation from the school that this was a COVID-related item, or was this just an issue with general scheduling that might have happened if COVID was not in play?
So my understanding is that the latter is probably the interpretation, the former is the interpretation that it was COVID related, in the sense that 2 of our partner schools have made a choice to run 4x4 semesterized classes, where the 3rd one is still maintaining their full year alternating day schedule. And that the reason that that was done was so that in remote learning, students and staff would have fewer classes to have to deal with during a period of time, such as a semester. When you semesterize, they designed something called a 4x4, where you would only be taking half of your classes in one semester and then the other half of the classes in the next semester. We only have 1 set of staff and we can only follow 1 schedule. And we were assured originally that it would not impact the students desiring to attend the Career Center. We found out very late, which I think I put in my report, that was different than what we had anticipated. And it impacts both Virgins and Mount Abe, although Virgins is still sending us some students, although not the number that had originally signed up for pre-tech. This is an effect on pre-tech only. It doesn't, well, I shouldn't say that. As far as we know right now, students desiring to access their full technical program, juniors and seniors, for example, have not been impacted, but it has impacted anybody that is a freshman or a sophomore. Like I said, about a week or so ago, we got notification that none of our pre-tech students from Mount Abe would be attending. Regents is still working with us, and we have some of their students, but I don't think we have all of those who had originally signed up because of scheduling conflicts. Because what that does is it takes 4 classes and puts them into one semester, and we have an alternating day schedule set up, interestingly, for Middlebury separate, and then Mount A, Virgins, and our home study population, which made up their own cohort. So effectively what has happened is that cohort for A, Virgins, and home study students has been reduced in numbers significantly because of the 4x4 split. Because instead of coming every other day, their classes are now every day. And what that was going to do was either cause students to have to take another class, whether it was like a career center or someplace else, that would have to fit into a 4x4 schedule, and I don't think Mount A was set up to do that. Regents, to some extent, may have had those alternating day classes because of our familiarity with that. Jay would know more, worked at Regents, but they were able to work alternating day classes in to help complete a student schedule if they were taking a career center class. Because we have to follow the alternating day schedule in order for all of our students to be able to do that, because we have dedicated sections from Middlebury on one day, and then on the alternating day, we have sections for Mount A, Virgins, and home study. And the combination of those was approximately equivalent to the Middlebury sections. So anything that the Career Center would have done would have resulted in, we had to stay with the original schedule, and Middlebury happened to adopt that, at least for the most part, that schedule moving into the first few months of the year.
Well, thank you for trying to explain what I'm sure is a very complicated situation. So.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
So Dana, thank you for answering most of my questions. My final question is, how many Mount Abe students are affected by this in the pre-tech category?
19. That was, I think, an accurate number that I put in the report.
Okay, so so how many can actually attend the program?
Mount Abe, 0 right now. We don't have, Mount Abe notified us that no one from Mount Abe would be coming to pre-tech.
So there's 19 pre-tech students that are missing out on an education right now, or an introductory education at the Career Center because of, quote, a scheduling issue. But the juniors and seniors that are, currently enrolled can continue their education here. Is that correct?
That is correct, because the technical programs run every day throughout the year. So when they make that commitment, it's easier for them to make an adjustment. They would just take something else. And we're almost already set up as a 4x4 because they go every day for the entire year. So the commitment for career and technical ed on the technical program side is far greater and easier, I guess, from a scheduling standpoint for our partner schools to accommodate.
Is this conversation still open at Mount Abe, or is it the door closed?
Jay, are you there?
Yes.
Before I mentioned anything, I just wanted to make sure that if I make a mistake, you'll correct me. But my understanding was that this was a done deal. I don't know.
So my communication with them was, they saw it as a significant challenge to make sure that students were fitting in the requirements they needed for graduation and their 4-year plan because of the scheduling challenge. They didn't say that they were not going to encourage any students to do it, but at this point we haven't had any who they've all dropped instead of any adding or staying in. So we did get, I don't know what it's worth, but both Virgins and Mount Abe have said that this is a 1-year schedule change for them to the block scheduling or 4x4 schedule, and they're planning to go back to year-long classes next year. The other thing is we have been having some conversation, been talking with a few of the pre-tech teachers just about potentially switching how we schedule our pre-tech programs, so that, because we've had trouble with scheduling pre-tech with our partner high schools in the past. It's been different issues, but that's generally where the scheduling challenges come. The technical programs, because as Dana said, they're every day, we don't have the same challenges. So we're just going to take a look and see, is there a way that we can schedule something so that we don't keep running, if schedules change, we don't run into the same problem and lose students inadvertently.
So what I will say, in addition to Jay's comments, is that we did establish last year and the previous year a schedule that worked for everybody. And one of the things that I was charged with doing when I took on the leadership here at the Career Center was to work with our partners to expand offerings for our partner schools and our students in the county. And we achieved that, but we had to achieve that by saying, look, the Career Center will be flexible with respect to scheduling, but we need one schedule that we all agree to so that everyone in the county can access that on a predictable basis. When Middlebury, Virgins, and Mount Abe chose two different schedules this year, it placed the Career Center at a distinct disadvantage because we couldn't do both. And that's what resulted in the situation that we have. So unfortunately, I don't think there's much the Career Center can do because our staff get locked into whatever the schedule is. And originally we were assured that there could be a modification on part of the partner schools to allow students to attend the Career Center, even though it was an alternating day. Because we worked with them last year to set up a schedule that was a little different from the previous year, but that alternated on, instead of a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday alternating Wednesday schedule, which seemed a little bit convoluted to folks, which is what we agreed to with them. We didn't set that up ourselves. They wanted to go to an odd and even day schedule, which we spent at least a couple of meetings with our partner administrators on to look at what that would be. And that meant that if it was an odd day, they would go to their odd day class, and even day they would go to their even day classes. And that was considered to be something that would work for all students in all partner schools. And that's what we had left with back in May or June. And then the change occurred over the summer when we were looking at having hybrid learning occur. That's one of the reasons that we said that we would be able to accommodate our students on non-cohort days. But even with that adjustment, our partners can't figure out a scheduling mechanism to release students because their classes run for the entire semester, and there are fewer than they would be doing if they were running for the whole year. So if you have a Monday class and a Tuesday class, you can have 4 classes on Monday, 4 classes on Tuesday, and they alternate and they go through the whole year. When they've changed their schedule to 4x4 semestering, 4 classes on Monday happen every day for the whole semester. And then the Tuesday classes happen in the second semester.
Dana, thank you for your explanation. And, I've been on the board long enough to see the progress that we've made in improving the numbers from Mount Abe. And I'm very disappointed in the fact that they are not looking at those 19, hopefully potentially full day students, and a whole year is being missed of introducing them to some of these fabulous programs. And it's too bad they had to drop, and too bad they had to pick up maybe some other elective along the way. But it really is upsetting to me as a representative of the community, that Mount Abe board, that the administration doesn't feel that these students' schedule is important to them.
Yeah, I can't say that, I couldn't go so far as to say that that's an accurate interpretation. But as Jay said, they couldn't figure out how to free the students to be able to come because they weren't offering anything on a alternating day schedule to complement that. I did make a suggestion that we could use VTVLC this year for them to access some of those classes, which could have been free. But that didn't get much traction, I don't believe.
And there was no traction regarding remote learning.
Dana, did you hear that question?
I did. The topic of remote learning for accessing the Career Center did not come up except in a couple of situations where the students had a scheduling conflict and we said we could accommodate that.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to say, I think remote learning is fine, but as far as the Career Center is concerned, I think it's a lot of hands-on is the point of the Career Center, so it would be very difficult to do that through a computer.
Lorraine?
Yeah, I'm sorry to beat a dead horse here. I'm still a little bit confused. So, Dana, in your report, you said that they may not be sending any pre-tech students due to the change in scheduling, but it sounds like that's a done deal according to what we were just told. But when did we originally plan these pre-tech classes with, teachers teaching these and thinking we're going to have these kids? And so now what happens? Do we have enough kids still to run those classes?
Well, there are a couple of things. We have some kids, because it's not just all Mount A. And we may be picking up some students from Middlebury to be able to fill in and complement some of the losses. But that's still up in the air. We have students who are still going through the ad period for some of our classes, but I can't tell you that it will make up for what we've lost. But yes, it was all planned out back in the spring for this. And when I pointed out at our last meeting in June, I think, that if this route were pursued, that it would potentially create a conflict that the Career Center alone could not resolve. We were assured that they would make modifications on the Mount A end to allow students to attend. Well, it was not just Mount A, it was Mount A and Virgins that were changing the schedule from what was originally designed.
So how many pre-tech kids normally take a class? I mean, when you're talking about 19 students, how many classes would those students be?
Those students might be spread out among 4 different classes. They do tend to cluster. There was a large number in plant and animal science. There were a couple, I believe, in STEM. I'm not sure about visual communications. If there was one, that might have been it. And what's the other one? Mechanical science. So if I were to divide those up, I would probably say half of them were in plant and animal science. And then the other half of those 19, so say 10 and 10, were divided up among STEM, mechanical science, and viscom. But I don't have those numbers in front of me.
Okay. It's definitely unfortunate. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's gonna be even harder if that hold harmless doesn't go through.
Yeah.
So the impact for this year is there's let me say this, the only impact this year is that fewer students would be able to access our programming. We can still run the programming and funding is already set for this year based on last year's enrollments. The impact is on the FY22 budget and how these fewer numbers are going to drive costs up. And I said earlier in this conversation that the impact of that is about $200,000.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's as if, before we start anything else, there's a $200,000 deficit we have to address. It will drive up our per pupil cost.
Yeah. And we already have heard from our partner schools that they aren't necessarily happy about the per pupil cost.
Let me back up. I apologize. That was slightly overstated. That's what it would be on any given semester, but we do amortize that over a 6 semester average. So let's call it $30,000 to $40,000 in tuition increase. That would drive our per pupil cost up if we take the number that we currently have, which is now lower than what we were anticipating by 9.5 FTEs, which is not insignificant. So actually it'd be 250, and we're taking a sixth of that. So it's gonna be easily $45,000, which would be a top driver for us.
Okay. So, are there any other questions, thoughts, for any of the reports that were presented?
Suzanne, I have a couple things.
Yes.
Yeah. Just regarding to what we were just talking about, I think, to be fair, you know, all our schools are really living in some challenging times and trying to deliver the best education they can to all the students. I certainly don't think Mount Abe and Virgins are trying to target the Career Center and, you know, forbid or prevent students to come there. It's just the circumstances that we find ourselves in. I just want to say that about that. I have a question about the makery space. So it's my understanding that we're not allowed to let the public in school buildings at this point in time. And I was just wondering how that works with the makery, and then do you have the staff, if the makery is open, are students in that spot as well? And how's that all working? I'm just curious.
All of the appropriate procedures for cleaning, I'll let David chime in as appropriate, are being followed. And the makery as an arm of adult ed, all of those folks are considered to be either employees or volunteer employees or students of the makery as paying members. So it's not just open to the public. We are following the same guidelines that are in place for all learning, adult learning or secondary learning. And so the cleaning is the same cleaning protocol, because David's been involved in every single one of our reopening meetings, and it's gone over the task list with all of the administrative assistants that works on the makery evenings, and all of the mentors who are running those programs.
Okay, so the makery isn't open to the public, or I'm confused. I thought that's how it works. Like the public comes to solo or whatever classes you want.
It's open, thanks, Christina, for the question. If I can jump in, Dana. It's open to the public in the sense of we open it up for enrollment in certain labs. And so we have both membership and drop-in. So technically people do have to register. So it's not an unlimited, so there's reservations. So you make a reservation, you pay your fee online before you show up. And then once you pay that fee, you're treated like any other student that would walk in the door with the same procedures. And each classroom is treated like all the other classrooms when other students are in it, as far as cleaning and wiping down the surfaces that we have.
Great, that makes sense. So you're not doing drop-in then, or everybody has to register?
Everybody has to register.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for any of our folks?
Suzanne, I
Yes.
just want to address Christina's concern. I don't think anybody at the Career Center feels that the leadership of either Mount Abe or Virgins is working at cross purposes to the Career Center. I just want to reinforce that the Career Center can't operate if our partner schools can't adopt a common schedule, because we can't flex in two different directions. And so what's most disappointing to me is that we had spent a lot of time and energy achieving cohesiveness, and that ended up getting divided as a result of COVID. How's that? Does that more diplomatically represent what our situation is?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just everybody's having a lot of challenges. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Right. No, we certainly understand.
Any other questions or discussion? So we'll move on then under other, which is a new portion on our budget, not our budget, but our agenda. It will be appearing every time we meet, and there's two things that I want to bring up. One that we can ponder and take up at our next meeting, and that is what our feelings are about doing part remote and part in the building for our board meeting. So I'd like you to think about it, and we'll add it to the agenda for next time. But the other piece that I did want to mention is that it was a comment that came out of the negotiation sessions this past year, and in speaking with Dana, he last year had standing meetings with the association and himself as a process of building positive relationships between individuals. And I have asked if, when those meetings start to happen again, if I could join them, and it would be for the same reason, trying to increase and build positive relationships between the board and the association. And so, you know, I just think that the more we can all get to know each other and what people are looking for, and we can all work better to work together to move the Career Center forward. So I just wanted people to know that I've extended that offer. I don't believe, as of this afternoon, that Dana has had a meeting yet with the association. So I'm just waiting to hear if my offer has been accepted. So that is what I have under other. Does anybody else have anything under other that might be related to board operation? Hearing none. Kim, since you are the other Mount 8 person, how about if I let you take policy 4.1 and you can explain it to Steve?
Basically, it's about the function of the board during a meeting. I guess that's a real quick way of addressing it. And that if it was run efficiently, yes. Lively discussion, yes. So a couple of bombshells, yes. Was everybody respectful of each other's conversation? I think, you know, generally we are, and I enjoy this board very much because we do that. You know, pro con doesn't really matter. Remotely, it makes it challenging. It was very challenging during negotiations, but again, what isn't these days? I have one clarification that I would like. I used the link that was on top of the agenda to try and get into the meeting, and it did not work. I think a little more clarification about which link is better, whether it's the calendar one or the other, saves a little time for a lot of us people that haven't been online for a couple of months. But anyway, other than that, thank you very much, Suzanne, for running an efficient meeting as usual. And on a personal note, she has checked on me many times this summer, and I missed her when she went away last week. But thank you, Suzanne, for checking on me.
You're welcome. So, that being said, I hope everyone saw in their email that there was a link sent out for executive session. So if we could have a motion to go into executive session for negotiations, personnel, contracts, we will leave this meeting, go to the Zoom link that was sent out, and then we will enter into executive session.
I will move.
Mike has moved to go into executive session for negotiations, personnel, contracts. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Come back and take action on anything?
What's that, Christina?
So we have to come back and resume this meeting to take action for any reason, or we're done here?
I do not believe that there's need for any action coming out of executive session.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will see you all like in 3 minutes in Zoom.